Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. If you're new to my channel, my name is Sophie and I would love it if you click that big red subscribe button down below and turn on that notification bell as well so that you never miss a video. Now, back in the year 2018, I was an au pair in Germany for around 6 months in total. I worked for 2 different host families during that period and lived in both a small city at one point, well, small in my opinion, comparing it to like London, and a village at another point. So I have quite a bit of experience to share, and yeah, basically in this video I'm going to be sharing my experience with you all and my tips and advice to anyone who is currently an au pair or looking to start working as an au pair, or is in the process currently of trying to find a host family, and anyone who's in the process of changing host families as well, because I did change host families. And that's basically why this video is so long overdue, because I was scared to make this video when I first came back from Germany because of the fact that I changed host families, and that was something that I was embarrassed to kind of speak about, which is stupid because there's so many people on the internet who speak about that, but the way I'd seen it, I'd fouled, because I'd basically been fired from the first host family in the nicest way possible that didn't even feel like I had been fired. And at the same time also, I never actually told my second host family about why I changed host families. I just assumed that they thought that maybe my contract had come to an end, but they never actually asked, and obviously it never came up when they in the hiring process, and I wanted them to hire me, so I didn't say anything. I don't know if I was in the wrong for that or not, because they didn't ask. If they had asked, I would have told them. It's not like I was lying for them. I was just hiding information from them. I don't know. You can comment down in the comment section down below whether or not you think I was wrong about that. I guess the fact that I was so nervous to talk about this probably means maybe I was in the wrong about that. But it's done. It's in the past. I was very scared for so long about them finding this video and then being like, oh, we should have never hired her as an au pair or something, or yeah. But anyway, there's so many people that have changed host families, and the fact that I've changed host families could actually make this video even more useful for some of you, if some of you are going through a similar experience. So yeah, this intro is already very long, so I'm just gonna hurry up and just stop talking and get on with the video. So there are loads of different websites which basically allow you to become an au pair, which allow you to find a host family, some of which you have to pay for, whereas others are free, but of course they all offer slightly different options, and maybe some are better for specific countries. So this is something that really you have to do your research in, and then choose the website that is best for you, best suits your needs. Now, I used the same site both times. I used Au Pair World, so I can only talk about my experience obviously using Au Pair World. Au Pair World is free for au pairs. For host families, I think it's free for them to create a profile, but they have to pay to message au pairs. But also this was back in 2018 that I think I even started looking in 2017, I'm not sure. So this is a long time ago, so whether or not this has changed, please do look into this, don't take my word for it. But yeah, that's how I remember it being. And that was basically one of the main reasons that I chose Au Pair World, because it was free and I was on a budget. I do really hope it is still free for au pairs, because most au pairs don't really have much money, and yeah, I feel like if host families can afford to pay for an au pair in the first place, they can afford to pay to use the site. So it makes sense that that's where their income, the site's income, comes from. But yeah, there were some other reasons as well why I chose the site. If you see me looking over this way, I'm just looking at my notes on my laptop. yeah, so the first one, because it was free, I was on a budget. The second, they had lots of information on this site for au pairs, including country-specific information. For example, what the minimum wage was for like an au pair in that country, which was really helpful as well, because, you know, you could tell if someone was, you know, trying to underpay you, and you could be like, no, I'm not gonna go I'm not gonna go work for you. And this was also really helpful because for example, they said that everyone in Germany had, I can't remember if they had to go to a German course or they had to have the option to go to a German course, and one potential host family that was looking at working for said that I couldn't go to a German course if I worked for them because there was just too much work to do, which obviously flagged some red flags in my head. So I never went and worked for them, because I was like, well, one, I'm supposed to be able to go to a German course, and two, why can all the other host families allow it, and why is it too much work for you? So I was thinking, are they actually overworking their au pairs? So things to think about. Very useful the site was in that sense. And then thirdly, I liked the use of the platform. You basically create a profile, and families create a profile. You can see, you know, au pairs can look at host families' profiles and message host families if they're interested in them, and vice versa. And then, you know, after messaging for so long, you can sort out Skype interviews, etc. But yeah, I really like that format, that you could just create a profile, and yeah, it was very easy to use. I had seen lots of YouTube videos like this one where people had said they used that site, so obviously that left me feeling that this site was quite trustworthy. It had worked for a lot of people, and I was able to find a lot of information on how to use the site to its full advantage. Some days I just can't think how to speak English, and it's my mother tongue. It's so embarrassing. But yeah. So knowing whether one host family is the right family for you. Now, obviously some of that is just going to be down to, you know, what matters to you when finding a host family, but I will say never ever work for a host family without having a Skype interview. Actually, my second host family just told me that they decided to hire me after I'd sent them one message, and I was like, no, I want a Skype interview, because, you know, I didn't know if they were the people who were actually in their pictures. To be fair, I was their first au pair, so maybe they just didn't realise that they needed to do that. And then afterwards my host mum was like, yeah, actually that makes sense, because they didn't know who they were letting in their house. I didn't know where I was going. It just made much more sense to obviously have a Skype interview. And also it's just a great opportunity for you to ask questions. It is not just, remember, it is not just you being interviewed, you are also interviewing the host family. And if a host family wants you to come work for them, you have a right to be like, no, just as with any job after an interview, you can be like, actually, I've realised that this job isn't the job for me. Yeah, you could be like, I've realised you're not the right host family for me. I think I'll be better suited with a different host family, and just continue your search until you find a host family that, you know, matches your needs, and yeah, that you feel like you would fit in well with. Yeah. I have the ideas in my head, I just can't explain them. Yeah, communicate them. And of course, look out for red flags. I did kind of mention this previously in the last section of my video, so maybe if you didn't watch that section, you've skipped this section, you might want to skip back, but yeah, I'll try and go over it without going over that section. Basically, yeah, just look out for red flags. Anything that doesn't sound right to you, maybe don't go work with that host family. Some red flags to look out for would be like, is there an opportunity to go to a language class. I used that as an example in the previous section of this video, because in Germany, for example, you're supposed to be able to go to a language class. One host family told me they couldn't. That flagged up that I couldn't go, and that flagged up as a red flag, because I was like, no, it's the law in Germany according to Au Pair World. So yeah, of course, is there too much work for you to do, things like that. Do they let you speak to their previous au pairs? If they've had any previous au pairs and you ask whether you're allowed to speak to them, do they actually try and put you in contact with those au pairs, or are they just like, no? If they're saying no, why are they saying no? That's kind of a red flag. Clearly they don't think that au pair is going to have very nice things to say about them. Also, sorry for my very squeaky chair. That was the chair, I promise. It was not me. It seriously was my desk chair, I swear. So, changing host families. Now, this is an interesting one. Firstly, I'm going to say, if you do end up changing host families, you're not alone. There's definitely other people that do change host families. It's perfectly normal. Secondly, really there should be some sort of like notice period as for any job. In my au pair contract, which is the standard one off of Au Pair World, what your au pair contract will look like will obviously depend on which company or website you apply to be an au pair through, but basically in my au pair contract it said that there should be a 2-week notice period for changing host families, and that is both like the host family giving you a 2-week notice period and you giving them a 2-week notice period. But of course if something really bad happened, then they could get rid of you immediately. I have heard horror stories where people haven't done something immediately bad, but the host family have just been so terrible that they've just got rid of them immediately anyway. My story was the complete opposite. I actually got a whole month. My host family were like, we want you to finish your German course and so stay until you finish it and everything will continue as normal. And they were looking to get an au pair after me anyway, so they always knew I was going to be their last au pair. It just kind of, the contract ended a bit earlier purely because the babies just didn't want to spend time with me. In my experience, the mum was a stay-at-home mum, but she had like a kid, 2 1-year-olds and a kid with special needs. So although she was obviously stay-at-home mum, she needed like an extra hand, which is why I was there. And with the kid who was 7 and special needs, who I thought would be obviously the most difficult to look after because I'd never looked after anybody with special needs. I had no idea how to. I was just kind of learning on the job. He was actually the easiest because the babies just didn't want to hang out with me. If she said, go take the babies out in the garden to play, and she didn't go out in the garden, they'll be playing for like 5 minutes, realise that she wasn't there and start running to the door like crying for her. Like, so that was just, what was the point of me being there? She couldn't literally walk away from the babies. So yeah, that's why I ended up changing host family. And I just went back to Au Pair World. And I kept looking, and I think because it was June that I was looking to start, it was quite easy for me to change host families when I was only looking at au pairing for 3 months, because I knew I was only au pairing in total for 6 months because then I was going to go to university. But because obviously over the summer there's a lot of families that look for au pairs whilst their kids are off school, I was quite lucky with that, and I was able to find another host family. Had I not found another host family, because obviously I live in the UK, it wouldn't have been the end of the world for me. I could have just gone back, stayed with my parents for a bit, and then flown back to Germany. Say I found a host family for July, not June, something like that. So I got quite lucky. Obviously it can be a bit more difficult if, say, you've got a visa for a country and it's like, if you leave, maybe you won't get back in. I mean, I didn't need to have a visa then because obviously it was before Brexit. Or if you're from somewhere that's far away, you don't really want to spend the money on the expensive flights just to fly back, then it might just be worth like finding a cheap Airbnb for a month. but it can be like awkward. But remember, you're not alone, so message in some au pair groups, because maybe you'll find a friend who's going through, an online friend who's going through something similar to you, and that could help you with support, I guess, and make you feel less alone. This one is an interesting question, because I know at university, for when we have our year abroad meetings, they say that we can find a work placement abroad if we want to, but it needs to be approved by the university. And my university says, I don't know about other universities, but my university says they do not approve au pairing roles because you probably won't speak much French, German, Spanish. Oh yeah, I'm doing a languages degree. Should have explained that for any of you who are new here. So we go on a year abroad to learn, improve our languages, and they literally say like, don't do au pairing because you'll just end up speaking English and won't, because most of the host families want you to speak English with the kids, so you will not learn any of the language, really. Well, enough of it. Yet the funny thing is, I did au pairing in Germany, and I studied abroad in Lyon in France, and I would say for around the same amount of time. It was 5 months in France, 6 months in Germany, but that month really didn't, I don't think it makes much of a difference. But I spoke so much more German in Germany and learned so much more German in Germany than French than I did in France. Okay, fair enough, I went to France in the middle of a pandemic, but with the host family, I just made it clear and let the parents know in advance before choosing them that I wanted to speak to them in German. I was okay speaking to their kids in English if that's what they wanted me to do, but I wanted to speak to them in German. And through the means of that, I actually ended up speaking more German than when I was going to university in France, because to be fair, I did have classes online, so I would stay in a lot, but I lived with other French native speakers in France, but didn't need to talk to them so much as I did my host family, and it was more just small talk in the kitchen, or if we were all hanging out, it was kind of hard for me to speak to them because everyone else was like French native speakers or a similar level, so they would just like talk before I got a chance to. I'd be too busy following the conversation if I actually figured out what they were saying and thought of something I wanted to say. By the time before I could even open my mouth to say it, someone else had like responded, because obviously I had to think a bit more before I spoke. But yeah, with host families, it was just, the two parents, easy to talk to, easy to practice my German with. With my second host family, actually, I would speak German to the grandparents because the grandparents didn't speak English, and we would go around there a lot for dinner, like once a week almost. And as well as that, of course, you had the German school. With the first host family, I did more hours of German school, and my level went from, I did an intensive course, and my level went from B1 to B2 in 2 months, the space of 2 months. And I don't think I've ever made that much progress that quickly in a language, and I was just suddenly confident that I could understand spoken German and confident to speak German to people. And then with my second host family, I spoke so much German because I'd had that class, and yeah, I spoke German with the host family. I would speak German out and about in the village as well because it was quite small. So I would say you can definitely learn a language through being an au pair. Don't listen to people who say, oh, you won't speak the language because you'll just speak English with the host kids. Just make sure that obviously you let the family know that you want to speak the language of that's spoken in that country before you agree to be their au pair, in case they want you to speak English to them too, because obviously that can happen. But if you're very stubborn and you're like, let them know in advance, and when you're there you're like, just start talking to them in that language, you will improve and you will learn that language. That's all I've got to say. This one is hard because obviously it varies from family to family, so I will just give explain a typical day working for each family that I worked for, just to show how it can kind of vary, but should give you a bit of an idea. So with the first host family, I would get up, make breakfast for the 7-year-old, and then he would have a bus take him to school, so he would go to school. Then I would go to German class, then I would come back. That would be lunchtime. This is a long time actually to remember. I can't remember if it was lunch first or if it was take the babies for a walk in the pram so they fall asleep first. I think it may have been that. And then when they wake up, it was milk. It was milk time. And then it was basically, just play with the babies and maybe take the 7-year-old out for a walk when he came back from school, depending on, because sometimes they had specific babysitters come for him as well, so it kind of depended on that. But that was basically my day. Maybe sometimes hoover, clean up a bit, clean up from the toys that the babies were playing with, change the baby's nappies, just typical things like that. But I was always, after dinner pretty much, and after cleaning up from dinner and like getting the babies ready for bed, then I could go to bed. So I was always like, I got let off pretty, I don't think I would go, I think around 8 maybe, I can't remember, 8 p.m, maybe 7 p.m, like honestly I can't remember, it was so long ago, but it never felt too late that I would go to bed. I would have the evening to myself. The second host family was quite different. It was I looked after a 5-year-old. I would get up again, make him some sort of like, it wasn't packed lunch, it was some sort of breakfast that we would have at school, but then he'd still have breakfast before he would go. When I think it was like a little brunch snack thing, I would make him that. Then we'd go to kindergarten together on bikes, and obviously I had to make sure that he was like looking both ways, checking for traffic and stuff, but he knew what he was doing. He was probably better at riding a bike than I was. Before I went to Germany, I hadn't even ridden a bike on the road because my mum was too terrified. She wouldn't let me ride my bike in a road as a kid. It was, I had to ride it on the path, which probably got in the way of everybody walking, as there wasn't that many bike lanes. Anyway, I've gone off on a tandem. So he went to kindergarten. I would often clean the house, make food for myself, go pick him up from kindergarten, make him like a schnitzel or stick pizza in the oven or some sort of quick food, lunch. Then basically spend the day playing with him and talking to him in English so that he learned English. Twice a week in the evening I would go to German school with my host mum, because we were both doing B2 German, because she was actually from Germany originally, so she was learning German too. And then would come back from German school and just sometimes every day was different. Sometimes it was summer as well, so sometimes we would go swimming in the swimming pool, or sometimes we would go to a park, I don't know, but that was what my typical working days were like. But obviously they vary from host family because my days did vary, as you can see, between the two different host families. I definitely got a lot of opportunities to travel as an au pair. With both host families, I actually had the weekends off. There were a couple of times with the first host family where the host dad did need to work at the weekends, so then my host mum would ask if I could work one of those days that weekends because he was working, but then she would make up for it by giving me like a day off during the week or an afternoon off or something. It depended on how long I was working over the weekend, but it always worked out that I would work the same amount of hours even if I did work a weekend, and I had most weekends off. Obviously as au pair you get some holiday as well, and often that worked out, like my host families would work it out that my holiday would be the Thursday and the Friday, so that I could have a long weekend, which gave me time to go on trips to nearby cities. And first host family I worked for actually lived really close to the Swiss border and Austrian border, so I went to Switzerland, I went to Austria, I went to Liechtenstein. Yeah, with the second host family I mostly just stayed in Germany, but the second host family actually really liked traveling around as well and going on little weekend trips, so they would take me with them places. So I definitely saved a lot of money there and stuff. I think I literally went on 2 trips by myself with the second host family. One was a day trip to Karlsruhe, which was actually just one of the cities nearby because I was living in a village which was near quite a few different cities. And the second one was I took a few days off and went to Hamburg up north. But yeah, that host family even took me on a road trip up to like northeast Germany with them. So I got very lucky there. Obviously not every host family is in a situation where they can take au pairs with them on holidays. I'm very grateful that they did take me with them on a holiday, and I will always be grateful for that. But yeah, you definitely have opportunities to travel. But yeah, just make sure that you read your contract, read how many days of holiday and days off you're entitled to, and just make sure that you get those. And if you know you're not getting those, or it's been a while and your host family hasn't said anything about your holiday, don't be afraid to bring it up with them, especially if they haven't had an au pair before, because they might not be used to the organisation of it and maybe not like think to plan out in advance exactly when your holidays would be, or maybe they just assumed that you would ask when you could take your days off. So just, yeah, don't be afraid to ask them about it. I'm sure they will understand because, you know, they probably have jobs too, unless they're like super rich. They probably have jobs too, and they probably like to have their days off as well, so they understand obviously where you're coming from. So yeah.